use of our time. I'm just going to kick off with a little bit of house cleaning. I think that's the right term for this. So as you came into this session, your mic is muted, and we just ask that unless you're a panelist to remain muted for the remainder of the event. Your video is also off. Probably the best way to go about this event as well. We will be recording, so we just wanted to make you aware of that. So my name is Bo McMillan. I am the Senior Coordinator of Media Relations at the Christ Hospital Health Network here in Cincinnati. And I am one of the co-chairs of PRSA New Pros. So this is the first Zoom panel that we're doing of the year. This is entitled, What Do I Do with My PR Degree Now That I Have It? And we've gathered a really great panel here of experts who have been in the field for some time, who come from a wide variety of either owning their own PR business, working at an agency or working in-house. And I think they have a lot of wisdom for us that is going to be really helpful. Quick plug for New Pros. We exist to essentially help build community and to equip newer public relations professionals here in Cincinnati. So we help anywhere from soon-to-be graduates to those who have been in the PR field probably about 5 years or less, I'd say on average. So we do events like this. We also have, and this is one of my favorite things, we have a virtual happy hour. We do that once a month. That happy hour takes place on the last Thursday of every month. It is currently virtual, just like this. When we started planning all of our events a few months ago, we had no idea the world would look like this. So we're making the best of it. We look forward to the day when we can actually meet in person for the happy hours. But until then, we're doing it over Zoom. We had our first one last month, and it was pretty cool. We have questions that kind of keep conversation going on Zoom. Everyone's got a drink. And we really just want that to be a low-key way for us to build community. We're going to bring some pros into those, let you ask questions, but we're not stuffy about it. We really want to help each other out in a way that's fun. So those will be on the final Thursday of every month. I think this one is July 30th, if I have my calendar right. But we'll be sending out information in emails and on PRSA's social media channels, and it'll be an Eventbrite sign up, kind of like this was tonight. So yeah, look out for that. So once again, if you're just joining us, please stay on mute for the remainder of the event, unless you're a panelist, of course. The way that we're going to kind of structure this is I'm about to introduce our panelists. I'm going to read very brief bio from each of them so you can get to know them. And then for the first half, we're going to go through some pre-populated questions we have. So what we did is we reached out to the PRSA heads of local universities around here in Cincinnati. And we just said, what questions do your students have? What do they want to know? Where are they having issues? Where are they, kind of in the dark, either if they're getting ready to graduate or if they just graduated? We got back a huge list of really, really good questions. So we're going to kick off with those. And then in the second half, we're going to ask chat questions. So starting right now and throughout the rest of this event, again, remain on mute, but feel free to put a question into chat. If you have one right now, or if someone says something that spurs along a question, put that in chat and we'll get to that in the second half of the panel. Chances are we have so many that we probably won't get to all of the questions. But if we don't, we're actually going to send those around to our PRSA experts later after this event. We'll get those answered and we'll get those back out to you. So ask your question, it will get answered. Lastly, and then we'll get into it, I have put, if you guys can't see it, let me know, but I've put my email address into the chat. Again, if you have any questions about New Pros or want to know how you can get involved or want any information, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via that email address. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelist. And Rob, because of your location on my Zoom screen, I'm going to kick off with you. Rob Pasquinucci. Finding and telling stories that help build brands, motivate employees, and engage audiences is the focus of Rob's work. Rob's career includes stints at 2 integrated marketing firms, Luxottica, UC, and Northern Kentucky University. He started out as a newspaper reporter in Mansfield, Ohio, where the movie Shawshank Redemption was filmed. His experience includes public relations, web content development, magazine editing, and corporate communications. Rob holds an MA in communication from Northern Kentucky University and bachelor's in journalism from Ashland University. He is an accredited member of the Public Relations Society of America and teaches PR writing courses at UC and NKU. Outside of work, he enjoys bicycling, hanging out with his family, and rooting for Cleveland sports teams. Thank you, Rob. Brandy Jones. Brandy Jones APR is an award-winning public relations professional with more than a decade of experience. She is the Vice President of External Affairs for SORTA, Cincinnati Metro, where she serves as the organization's spokesperson and is responsible for overseeing media relations, digital media, employee communications, marketing and advertising, community engagement, and government affairs. Just very briefly, I want to thank all of you for putting like your full scope of work. As PR people, we wear a lot of hats, and I think that's really cool that we can talk about all that. Continuing on with Brandy, she has been recognized as a 40 under 40 by the Cincinnati Business Courier, a top 40 under 40 by Mass Transit Magazine, and is a recipient of numerous PRSA Blacksmith Awards for her professional body of work, including being a member of the 2016 PRSA Communications Team of the Year. She is a graduate of Xavier University and is an accredited public relations professional. Sarah Cullen. Sarah Cullen is the owner and chief storyteller at Signal Tree Creative Communications, where she helps organizations reach their key audiences with messages that stand out. Prior to taking her journey as a solo practitioner in 2018, Sarah accumulated 15 years of experience working in marketing communications, corporate communications, and advertising. Always looking for an adventure, she earned accreditation in public relations, APR, in 2014 and a bachelor's degree in public relations and political science in 2003 at Eastern Michigan University. She serves on the Cincinnati PRSA leadership team as the digital strategist and serves as vice chairwoman for the Greater Harrison Chamber of Commerce. She is the proud parent of 1 son and 1 dog who has way more Instagram followers. Outside of work, Sarah likes to escape in a kayak, along a dirt trail, or just inside a good book. And last but not least, Danielle Jones. Danielle Lewis Jones is a young lady who is fueled by her passion to live life to the fullest. She graduated summa cum laude from Florida A&M University with a degree in public relations, and she earned her master's degree in business administration from the University of Cincinnati. As Assistant Vice President and Senior Public Relations Manager at Fifth Third Bank, Ms. Jones provides strategic corporate communications support and corporate communications plans for areas of the bank, including, but not limited to, corporate social responsibility, community and economic development, inclusion and diversity, supplier diversity, the Multicultural Recruitment Strategy Team, the Fifth Third Bank Foundation, and the Community Development Corporation. In 2018, she co-founded the Greater Cincinnati Black PR Professionals as a way to connect and provide resources for African American public relations specialists. So I want to thank each one of our panelists for being here tonight and taking our time to answer these questions and to give us our insight. I'm really looking forward to it. So without further ado, we will get into it. And just for the sake of continuity, Rob, I will kick this first question off to you. And then the rest of the panelists, please join in from there. So really easy softball question initially, Rob. What does your day-to-day look like? And if every day is different, why is that?
Well, I think in PR, it's a cliche, but every day is different because I'm talking from my experience as an agency professional. There are different clients, different challenges each day that come up. But the typical day for me would involve some writing and developing content that could be used as a PR pitch or on, in content marketing, or it might involve reaching out to a member of the media to gauge their interest in a story or looking at editorial calendars or things like that. So, but from a day-to-day standpoint, that could change. The next day could be a strategy session with a client, or it could be a new business pitch. So that's one of the things I like about agency world. I've been in it probably more years than I care to admit, but you do have that kind of variety. So, you know, last month we were talking to a company that does sustainable packaging for products. I also do work with financial services firms, but also an organization called Safety Week that helps construction workers be safe. So all those are different, have different needs, have different audiences, and that makes kind of the day-to-day different. But every day, I think in PR, and this is putting my professor hat on here, is going to involve some writing, good knowledge of strategic development of a plan, and building relationships. I mean, public relations, or relations is in the name. So those relationships could be with reporters, with your fellow colleagues, and we'll talk about, I know we're going to talk about networking here in a minute, or with professionals in your office. And I know that's hard to do now when we're doing it all on these screens, but it's got to happen. And you know, I tell my students, if I bring in a guest speaker, even virtually, link into that person. You'd be surprised how few do that. It's important to every person you meet. You know, professional relationships you have are really a currency that you can use to help build your career. So, you know, if your dad's a lawyer, your mom's a lawyer, link into their friends, because you'd be surprised how quickly you make, especially if it's a town like Cincinnati or Dayton, how quickly those connections will lead to something or some place you'd want to be. So, so that's a long answer to a short question, but yeah, definitely every day is a little bit different, but usually involves a good amount of writing and media relations and PR type things like that.
Well, I'll jump in. I'd say that if you're doing the job well, there should be a good amount of variety in your day, whether it's, you know, writing releases about something that's going on, switching your hat over to event planning, or working with a reporter to do some type of photo op for something you got going on. And then, you know, strategy around social media. What are people saying about you? What do you need to respond to? And then quickly adapting and adjusting every day. Typically, I find out whatever I had planned to do that day, rarely is that the day that I have. And instead, I'm just being very responsive and switching, putting on different hats. And my day is very fluid between being at different meetings, because we should be integrated into the whole company. It shouldn't be in a silo of just PR. You should know what's happening in operations. You should be in meetings, you know, with the finance folks. And so you should really have a leg into all parts of the company, and taking all that information that you're gathering every day, and adjusting and thinking of new ways to promote your company, to tell those different stories. So the day is very fluid and very diverse.
I'll say.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead, Sarah. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you know, my days, each day looks more alike lately than it used to. That's for sure. But I think Rob talked about, well, you've all talked about variety. That's part of the appeal for me in working in the field of public relations. I'm not somebody, and I imagine the others here on the panel are similar. I'm not somebody who likes to spend my day behind a desk or in a cubicle. So while I enjoy writing, I need creative inspiration as well. And I like to get out there and meet people, and I like to learn their stories, and I like to learn about how things work. So I will say in running my business, I've found a rhythm in reserving my mornings as much as I can for working on my task list for existing clients. So if I have a piece of website copy or a press release that I need to draft, or maybe an email newsletter, I try to focus on those type of things early in the morning. I just feel like I do better work at that time. And then I can follow up on, you know, things that aren't emergency, you know, phone calls, emails, things like that, or, you know, prospects. I'm not meeting with a lot of prospects these days, but I try to do those type of things after lunchtime. So, but these days, yeah, it's, I'm working out of my home more than ever. I have a home desk area, but I've been working here in my kitchen quite a bit, 1 or 2 days a week, and just kind of giving myself a little variety, because I've always been somebody who likes to go to a coffee shop and work there. So that's kind of how I'm dealing with stay at home. So.
Just to build on what everyone has already said, I think it's a matter of being able to be agile and meet your clients where they are and to be able to provide them with whatever needs they have. So on today, one of my clients may need me to write a press release and another client may need me to help prep, an executive for an interview, while someone else by the end of the day may need me to work on a PowerPoint presentation for them because they're going to be presenting to a big board or in front of a large audience. And then tomorrow I may be needing to write another press release to go out on a business wire, or I may be needing to accompany the CEO and his communications person on a video shoot. So I think it's a matter of really taking a step back and seeing what your clients need from you and then adjusting your day according to how they need you.
Yeah, thank you all. That's fantastic. It is certainly a job that requires agility and being able to do a lot of different things well. So let's jump into it a little more. What are the top skills people are looking for in a PR new hire? And a subsequent question is, what are employers expecting as far as portfolios or work samples? And I'll open that up to anyone to begin.
I'd be looking for someone who is able to get along with a lot of different people. You in public relations, you're going to deal, I don't care what organization you work with, I don't care what agency you work for, in whatever sector of the industry you're in, you're going to come into contact with a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds. Everybody has an opinion. And so you'll need to know how to get along with a lot of different people. Having people skills is probably at the top of my list. Knowing how to write, knowing how to effectively communicate, being able to actually think out a plan and then execute on it very quickly, because as we all know, things are ever changing. There's always something going on. There's always something that you have to hop on and do it within a quick manner. I also think just being able to network well, that also plays a role in it. So as all of us know, we deal on a daily basis with reporters, and you have to be able to know how to feed those reporters with the information that they need and the way that they want it and in the time frame that they give you. Those would be the things I would be looking for.
Well, certainly those soft skills are critical, as Danielle was sharing. Additionally, I think having initiative was something that I look for. I don't really want someone that I have to come to and say every task for the day, here's what you need to do next, and then next and next. I want someone who says, hey, I'm looking, I'm learning, I'm observing, I'm watching social, I'm reading the paper. Here's something that I think we should be saying. Here's an activity that I think would get us some attention. Here's a post that I think on social that will go over really well. So I really want someone to bring me ideas, to bring me concepts, and also to be creative, is think out of the box. I don't want to do the same thing we did last year for that event. I want some new, fresh ideas and concepts. And also, I think something that's underrated is just the foundation of PR. I have been surprised at how many people have come and don't know how to write a thorough press release or how to put together a plan or know the tenets of a plan. So kind of having some of that solid foundation of PR and how things are done, I think is something that is certainly underrated.
Yeah, I would say a solid foundation of AP style would be great. That's something that can be learned on the job, and it becomes more inherent by doing. But having a solid foundation on that would be good coming into a job. But really, those soft skills that you can't teach, the ability to work well with others, to be polite, friendly, punctual, those type of things are very important.
Yeah, the idea is business intelligence. So kind of understanding kind of on a broad base what, you don't have to go to business school, but have an idea of profit and loss and constituencies and some of the things that might come up in business. Read the Wall Street Journal a couple of times, understand what issues are happening in that industry. I think it'd be really helpful. And yes, on the style book, mine looks like this because I use it all the time.
Great, thank you guys. And we'll kind of build off that, just this idea of how to best present yourself, the best skills to have as you're looking for that job. Let's talk about resumes for a little bit. Should resumes be really graphic design heavy, use color, etc., or is a basic resume best? With tools like Canva that utilize heavily designed templates being free for students, there are a lot of opportunities to make resumes unique. So I'll kind of do this as a two-parter. A, do you think that you should be more creative and flashy with your resume? And then, B, going back to that idea of a portfolio, what are some things that you would include to show employers that you have those skills necessary to walk into the job?
I can start on the resume, and I think some of the folks on the call who are at corporate environments might corroborate this. The way I understand, if you're going to go work for P&G or, one of the big companies here, they have resume readers that are going to look at only the text. So if you send them the quote unquote pretty version of your resume, it may not pick up all the elements you want. So yes, if I think it probably shows something to have a creative, artfully designed resume. I think that's sometimes part of our job. And maybe that's in a folder you hand at the physical interview, or if you ever do those again. But you should also have sort of a text-only version that uses standard, basic fonts, a sans serif and a serif, and have that to be able to upload into the employment portal that some of these big companies use, so that you're not getting gobbledygook on the other end and someone can't even read it.
I was going to say maybe just incorporate one or two sort of creative elements, maybe some kind of branding as in your header, or, if part of the header is in like a more creative font, something like that. But as far as like layout, like Rob was saying, I think keep it simple. And also, this is probably a good time to think about the audience. It may not just be a PR manager who's reviewing the resume, at HR, other company leaders may be involved too. So I would think about how they might receive the format.
I don't think there's anything wrong with a splash of color or design, but I wouldn't go over the top. But I also think what's more important is the content in the resume, and don't, allow the design to trump what you're actually putting in and showing as far as your experience goes. As far as the portfolio, I'm starting to see a trend now where more individuals are having a online portfolio where they're including some clips of them, if they have any broadcast experience, or if they have social media content that they're proud of, or videos that they've taken, or photographs they've utilized. So whatever the job specifics are calling for, I think a digital is a great way to showcase yourself. Certainly it isn't required. There's other ways to still show it through print, or bring something with you to the interview. But I think there's a variety of ways that people can tap into showcasing themselves.
I think if a person does their research and find out, they investigate the culture of the company that they're going to work for, it can also help guide them in what they choose to put on their resume. I'm not the biggest fan of all of the extra graphics. I, like the other panelists, I'm more interested in what you can actually do and what your experience has been in. But at the same time, if you're going to apply for a job, say in like a creative services, or for, something that you be doing some graphic artwork for, then maybe that would be appropriate. Again, it goes back to you just doing your research and figuring out more about the culture of the company, and you making your best judgment on what all needs to go on your resume. But I also like what Rob had to say about perhaps having two different versions. So maybe having the version with your splash of color and with all of your shapes and all of that, and then also having a text-only version. I think that that's a great idea. And then to Brandy's point, I've also seen people go to the digital format where they can actually upload their clips, they can upload any of their special projects that they've worked on, and that's efficient and it's helpful.
That's great. Thank you all. Yeah, I think that focus on knowing your audience is so important. Obviously, that plays into the field itself, but when looking for a job, I think that's really critical. Continuing on that thread, as you're, just graduating and looking for that first position, it's not always easy just to jump straight into exactly what you want. Sometimes you kind of have to work your way up in a company. What would you say are some of the best starting positions if you want to end up in a PR, communication, marketing related field? The first step after graduating is a big decision, and it's hard to know where to begin your career to set you up for long-term success. And maybe you can also take a little bit of time to share where, each of you started as well.
I can start. When I was in college, and this is going to be critical also, but when I was in college, I did a lot of different types of things on my college campus so that I would be prepared for the real world. So I wrote for the college newspaper. I was a correspondent for the college's television station. I wrote for the college magazine. Because at that time, I knew I wanted to go into PR, but I had all of those things at my hands. And so I figured, well, why not dabble in a little bit of all of them? And then in terms of internships, I interned with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I interned with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And then I also interned with the National Black Data Processing Associates. And so I think coming out, if you're not able to hop in, first of all, understanding what it is that you want to do. So like coming out of school, I knew that an agency probably was not the best fit for me, but I was willing to do it if that's what I needed to do. But looking at what it is that you want to do and then trying to direct your path that way. And so for me, I loved kids, I still do. And I loved business. And so for me, my first job out of college was actually working at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center as their PR assistant. And so I wasn't doing calendars like a traditional assistant, but I was assisting with a lot of different projects on the team. And I stayed there for 11 and a half years until I switched over to Fifth Third almost 3.5 years ago. Understanding what the industries are. So corporate is going to have a different feel than say an agency, and an agency is going to have a different feel than a nonprofit. So really, again, doing your research and figuring out, okay, now where would I be a good fit? And then looking at what entry level positions are in those different companies. So at a Fifth Third, it may be something like an assistant. At Children's, it's going to be an assistant or a coordinator. At a nonprofit, you may be able to come in with a higher title, but you're going to be doing some very entry-level work. So just kind of, again, I always go back to doing your research and figuring out where it is that you want to be, and then looking at the industry that you think you want to go into, and not being closed off to other opportunities either. Because you may come out of school and say, my dream job, I'll speak for me, my dream job was to work at P&G or Coca-Cola. That's all I wanted to do. And my dream job actually was working at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center.
And I think I wrote down this in my notes that, anything gets you exposure to different things is helpful, except COVID. Don't get exposed to that. Get your hands into, so whatever job you do get, try to get involved with other things. But don't be afraid to take a job that, might not be your, like Danielle said, it's not your dream job, but at least will get you to that next step. I started a newspaper reporter in a tiny town, and that helped teach me how to write and how to be edited and how to how to work with people. You build on that, you build on each experience, and you get something out of it. If you're not getting anything out of it, definitely get out of there. But especially in this environment, anything you can get, even if it seems really boring, you might be fascinated by it. I mean, for years did B2B PR at HSR and wrote about meat slicers and scales, and I found that surprisingly fascinating and fulfilling. I mean, maybe that's makes me a nerd, but to be able to write about that makes it a lot easier to write about more approachable things that you might be more interested in.
I think Danielle and Rob were right on. It's about trying different things. I think if you're right out of college, you're still very new and to the profession and to your career, and you have time to, try agency life if you're interested in what that looks like, or try working at a nonprofit or corporate. I have the benefit of having a few internships in college, so I was able to kind of get a feel for like what my personality best lent to and what type of things interested me, and also what type of things did not. And so that was something that I had to discover through the internship process. And, then I spent a little bit of time postgraduate at a PR agency, and I realized that lifestyle did not, suit well for my interests. And so I went over to nonprofit. That's where I'm at in Metro. And I've been here nearly 12 years. And, I kind of find that, community-centered things, and it's more where my passion lies. And so I think you have to try a few things to figure out what is the best fit for you, as well as what type of sector of PR that you might be interested in going into.
Talking about different types of organizational settings, my first job out of college was I was a marketing specialist for a community bank. So you can imagine the marketing department was small. It was just me right out of college. But it was a lot of fun. It was, earning local media coverage, planning community events, those type of things. So it was a great experience. But I knew coming out of that job, and I left because I relocated back to Cincinnati. I knew that one thing I wanted was to be a part of a team. And I knew that first 4 years of working independently, it was a great experience, and I was able to initiate and act on a lot of my own ideas there. But I wanted to be exposed to other like-minded people, I guess you could say, and draw from their experience. So after that, I went to work on the corporate communications team at Rumpke, and I stayed there for about 8 years and learned a lot from the other pros there on that team. So, and then from there, I actually, I took a very different type of job as a copywriter in an advertising department, because I knew I wanted to take steps toward having my own business. And when I was at Rumpke, although I loved that job, my schedule was all over the place. I was traveling to different locations, and the hours, you just never knew when you were going to get a call in the middle of the night, that type of thing. So I got a more 9-to-5 type of job so that I could pick up freelance opportunities. And that's how I made steps toward starting my business, which I did 2 years ago. So you kind of learn, I think, throughout the process, what's, what you want to do, what kind of environment that you want to work in.
So each of you mentioned this, and then also specifically mentioned, going out and trying different things. And quite often that involves meeting different people and building those relationships. So let's talk networking. We all know networking is critical. We all know, especially in a job market, a lot of times it's who you know just as much as your skills and abilities and what you're bringing into it. So I don't think we need to, wax poetic about the fact that networking is important. But let's talk about, and I apologize for the siren in the background, but let's talk about how to effectively network. There are a million networking events going on even now. We're basically doing one right here. I mentioned the happy hours that new pros do earlier. So how do you network effectively? And then especially, like, how would you recommend people going about networking now during a time of a pandemic when we can't necessarily go out to a specific happy hour and meet people in person?
I think these Zoom chats are great opportunities. to connect with others. You know, for example, feel free to follow up with me after this call if you have more questions about my experience, or, you know, how I might be able to give you some advice in your career path. But I know, you know, other organizations that I've been involved with, like the Chamber of Commerce, we're trying to get people to attend these type of sessions because we know it's so important for these business leaders and business owners to connect with others and share their experiences and what they're doing. So I would say look for more opportunities like this, and Bo has plenty more. Bo and Jasmine have more planned, so.
I would also say don't be afraid to reach out to people. I think that sometimes people are intimidated, or they may be a little scared of actually reaching out to someone to ask them questions. And just like Sarah said, I'm available too. You can email me. You know, I read an article, this just happened, I think it was last week. I read an article on a Black Enterprise newsletter that I got about this guy down in Houston who has purchased up houses that are like dilapidated. He's trying to keep gentrification from actually happening in that neighborhood. And I was reading through the article and I was like, wow, that's really cool. That's something that I'm not ready to do it right now, but at some point down the line, I would love to be able to do something like that, whether I'm in Cincinnati or another city or wherever. And so I saw the guy's name in the story. I found him on LinkedIn and I was like, well, let me just send him a LinkedIn request and see if he actually responds. And he did. And so I wrote him back and I was like, hey, I was reading this really cool story about you, and I think it's pretty awesome what you're doing. And he's like, oh yeah, you know, this is what I've done. Let me know if you want help when you're ready for it. So I think part of it is just having the guts to actually do it. I didn't know the guy from Adam, and then I've had other people do the same thing to me. And sometimes it's taking a chance, right? Because you don't want the psychopath in your inbox, but you know, you can learn how to delete them pretty quickly. But normally, you know, sometimes it's just about taking a chance. Hey, I checked out your LinkedIn profile. You are in the role that I one day would love to be in. Do you have 15 minutes or do you have 30 minutes to hop on a phone call with me? Or can I send you some email questions and you tell me how you got to where you are? And I think that that's a good way to start. Got to start somewhere.
Yes, I've had a few folks reach out to me and, you know, who I didn't know, and they just said, hey, I'm interested in starting in the career, interested in your organization, interested in an association you're a part of. Would you be willing to meet me for coffee? Or, you know, could we chat on the phone for a little bit, or can I send you some questions? And I've never refused. In fact, it was something about them taking the initiative to reach out and kind of take charge of their own career and trying to make those connections that really I found it be inspiring. And certainly, you know, we all want to help anyone who reaches out for help, especially in our industry or otherwise. So I think it's just being bold. If you're a little nervous about what to talk about, find something common. Did you guys go to the same university? Do they maybe have a connection through LinkedIn? You can see, oh, you know, so-and-so, you know, could just find some way to kind of open that door with a commonality that you might have. And you'll find that most people would be receptive of that and willing to help you if they're able to.
So as we're like, I guess, continuing down this trend, you know, we network, we find opportunities, we build resumes. When you get to the interview, you go through your interview. I guess I'll ask this in two parts. A, what is the best way to follow up after an interview? You know, we've heard that's typically a good idea. It could be a simple thank you, but how would you recommend following up? And I'll put that to a second part. How do you balance offers? So this is a scenario I actually once found myself in. It seems like a dream at the time, but it can actually be a little frustrating. But the example is you interview with a company you aren't very excited about, but you need a job and you had an interview. But you also interviewed with a company you would like to work for, but you haven't heard back yet. So you get an offer from the company that you're like, I don't know. But you've interviewed with the company you really want the job for, you haven't heard. How do you balance those offers, and how do you best follow up with those individuals?
I mean, this is a point where your HR folks, if you're in a company that has them, is your friend, because I think it's fair and a polite way to say, hey, I'm really interested in this opportunity. I'd love to know your time frame, because I'm, I mean, we've had people talk to us at Intrinsic, hey, I'm sending out an offer, and sometimes that will spur us to say, yes, or or sometimes say, hey, you're just not one of our finalists, and be, off you go, have fun. So, but I think that's fair to do, especially if there's HR people. But do it in a polite way. Never play the game of trying to play one against the other. So.
I think the best way to follow up outside of COVID is a nice handwritten thank you card. I think that always goes a long way. I think that it's just a very kind gesture. It shows that you took the time out to actually address a card when everything right now is digital, to the people that you interviewed with. If you write in something nice to each of the people that you interviewed with, because chances are you're probably going to interview with more than one person and maybe recall something that actually happened in your interview. I think that that's really nice. During COVID, you may have to just send an email, which is nice also. You have to make adjustments. In terms of the offers, I can't really speak to that. But what I can speak to is negotiating offers. So when you're in that job and you may have been working for 2 or 3 years someplace, and you're starting to feel like, okay, it's time for me to move somewhere else. To Rob's point, what you can do is work with your HR team and work with your boss, if you have that type of relationship with them, and be very transparent about what's on the table for you, and see if they'd be willing to counter offer, or see if they'd be willing to put some more on the table for you to stay where you are. I did that with Cincinnati Children's, and although I love them and they'll always have a place in my heart, Fifth Third was just able to offer me more in terms of growth and finances and all of that. But we had a lot of conversations going back and forth to see if I'd be willing to stay. And so never hesitate to do that either. Once you get into your role and once you've been there for a while, don't try to do that your first year, because they're going to look at you and laugh. But after you've been somewhere for a few years, and after you've started to make moves in your career, and after you've been able to prove yourself, never be afraid to go out and do a few interviews, see where you are, and also look at things like glassdoor.com, see if you're getting paid what you need to get paid. That's always something that you can consider negotiating on too. But yeah, I think that, some of it is having good conversations with people that you trust within your organization, and talking with your HR person.
All right, so you go through the process, you get the offer. Let's say you land that job that you're really looking forward to, and you want to make a splash early on. You want to make a good impression. You want to show them that you're up to the challenge that they've asked you. After you hit that job, what are the must do's during the first couple weeks, or we'll even say the first few months, to make sure you have a full understanding of the position outside, obviously, mandatory onboarding. But B, then how do you gracefully acclimate and efficiently acclimate into your new position?
One of the things I did when I started Exotica, which was a large corporate environment, is, I really wanted to learn who I was writing for. So I said, hey, would it be okay at Exotica, for those of you who might not know, owns Lens Crafters and Pearl Vision and Sears Optical and Target Optical and Sunglass Hut and a host of others, and the insurance company that you would use to get your eye exam covered. It's called IMED. So I said, hey, can I go visit some of these stores and our manufacturing facility in Columbus? And they said, yeah, that'd be great. So we, my advice is to network internally, especially the big organization, but even the small organization. Find out people, seek out people. Some of you will walk into an organization like Fifth Third, which I'm sure has a very broad onboarding program. But sometimes you're going to walk into an agency of 20 people, and if they don't have something set up, say, I'd like to have a meeting with people across functions so that I can learn what everyone in this company does, you know, and really really kind of build out your network internally, because that's going to be really important. And remember who those people are, because, you know, months or years later, they could be really helpful. They could be people that could, you know, offer you a leg up on your next step in your career.
Yeah, to build on what Rob was saying, really tap into the expertise of the people you meet along the way in the onboarding process, and do not be afraid to ask questions. Really just learn about, you know, who they are and what they do. That's part of the networking experience, I think. So, you know, later down the road, you never know when somebody you met who might work out in the plant, or, you know, may not even work in the PR office with you, but they may be somebody who would be a great resource for you when you need information or you need an ally. So
I think that piece about networking internally is huge. Even at a place like a Fifth Third, I mean, you get there and they give you this online training that you go through, and then you show up and it's like, oh my gosh, there's all these people, and there's what line of business and who does what and what technology. And so one of the things that my boss, who is also in PR, one of the things that he encouraged me to do was to start having coffee with people and to sit down and have just 30-minute touch base meetings with people. And I'm like, well, I don't know who this person is. Oh, it's okay. Go on ahead and send this person an email and just ask to get on their calendar and just find out about what they do at the bank and what their role is. And so after I got comfortable doing that, then it was like, okay, well, can I tag along with you to this meeting? I may never touch that area of the bank, but it would be helpful for me to at least find out about what's going on in that area or that division. I may need it later on down the line. So again, kind of going back to what some of our other points were earlier, don't be afraid to ask. The worst thing that they can tell you is no. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yes, and definitely learn the culture of that organization, and be the part, as in, so what is the dress code? Not just the dress code, but what is expected of you? I've seen so many people come in and they're dressed inappropriately for the culture at that company. And first impressions and how people perceive you matters a great deal. They're thinking about promotions, when they're thinking about who to be on what project, who to put out, especially in PR. You're part of the image and the brand of that company. You are someone who represents them in the community. What do you look like? How do you present yourself? So think about all those things, as well as who are the influencers within your organization, so that when you're trying to pitch an idea or a project, know who to align yourself with, or who you need to put on your team to help kind of champion you. Who do your leadership listen to? Those sort of things. And also, you know, be bold in stepping up and volunteering yourself for projects. People notice those who are raising their hands saying, how can I help? How can I relieve any burdens that may be, that my boss may have, or my boss's boss may have? So how do you make yourself of value, so that people will find you integral to the organization? They're always seeking you out for projects and for things that are important, so that way you can advance your career in that organization.
Yeah, that's really great stuff. And I really appreciated this question coming in, because I think it's so critical, especially in the early days of that job, whatever it is, to, you know, really cement yourself into the organization and to build those relationships that are going to help further that career. So you can do like what Danielle was saying with, you know, maybe down the line having counter offers from other, you know, organizations and things like that. You kind of build yourself into where you are, and you have those strong relationships to leverage things like that. So as we kind of get to the end of this panel, I'll throw this question out, kind of taking a step back. When you began your career, was there anything you wish you would have learned while you were in undergrad that you didn't?
Yeah, I heard Rob say this earlier, and it made me laugh a little bit, because business knowledge, you know, the ability to understand a financial report and things like that, that was not part of our curriculum that I was in at all. and you don't know what you don't know. So until you get out there, and fortunately for me, working in that small bank, that was a great opportunity for me to learn more of the financial aspects of business. So.
And to build on that, I think part of that business intelligence is, I guess you'll be surprised the first time something happens. And I guarantee you, unfortunately, someone you work with will be laid off. You'll be laid off. You'll have a lousy review from your boss. The company, the organization you thought you were part of is going to let you down. It's not going to be what you expected. And how you react to those and your resilience will go a long way to just making you better. Because everyone on this panel, I'm sure, has experienced those things, and maybe even within the last 6 months experienced those things. But we've also worked with people who can't handle them very well, and they're very difficult to work with because every time something happens, they act like the sky is falling instead of being resilient and figuring out how to dust yourself off and think of and find the next opportunity or make the opportunity to have work. So I think, you know, it's just kind of understanding that and learning how to just roll with that. I had a boss who'd say, we need you to be a thermostat and not a thermometer. So that means, you know, try to control the flow and the temperature in the room instead of telling everyone it's hot, I'm dying, you know. I mean, you know, because as bad as you might have it, there's people that have it 100 times worse. And, you know, and understand kind of what other people in the organization are doing. You might think your boss leaves every day at 3 o'clock and goes scoops around. Well, maybe he or she got there at 6 in the morning so they can get home at 3 to be with their kids. So just kind of understand that and don't react to that. React to that in, I guess, a mature way, which is, it sounds, I don't mean to sound demeaning, but, you know, react to that in an appropriate way. And that doesn't mean you don't question things, but it means that you, you know, try to do this in a professional way.
Well, one thing I wish I had learned in college was now that PR has shifted and they're almost expecting you to crown more and more into that role. I graduated in 2008, and at the time, they were not teaching all the technical side of things. You know, Facebook had just begun. No one was really thinking about social media for businesses. You know, video production, all that kind of thing was not in the PR area as heavily as it is now. So, you know, if I had a magic wand, I would have loved to have gotten all those technical skills back in my degree time. But, you know, if he doesn't have it then, you know, you can always pick up and learn things later in life. So, you know, there's, you know, you can have regrets, but there's still time to learn. We're learning something new every day in the industry.
I think there are a few things I would have done differently. As a new professional, I probably wish I had not put so much pressure on myself to know everything right away. I think as there may be others that are out there who are overachievers and you just go super, super hard and you put all of this stress and all of this pressure on yourself. And then you look up and either so much time has passed by that you've not actually enjoyed the season that you were in, or you've been so hard pressed to get to the next thing that you didn't quite learn everything that you were supposed to get in the first, you know, where you were. I remember being in college and one of my professors told me, he said, and my maiden name is Lewis, he said, Miss Lewis, you're not making enough mistakes. And I'm looking back at him like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to get the A, right? And his point was, but the only way that you effectively learn everything that you need to learn is to sometimes make the mistakes so that you can learn from your mistakes. And so for me, I look back and sometimes I wish I had not put so much pressure on myself to be that perfect, that perfectionist. Sometimes I wish I had maybe slowed down a little bit more and had really taken in the all of the experience for what it was worth, because I probably could have learned a lot more. To Brandy's point, when I was getting ready to graduate from college and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next, I had heard a lot about possibly getting like a master's degree in PR or communications. And a lot of the professionals that I talked to at the time were like, no, don't do that, because you're just going to learn what you've already learned. You should maybe look at getting an MBA. And to Sarah's point, so I went on ahead, got my MBA, but I struggled through the entire program. partially because I've never been a big fan of math. It was very, very hard for me. I made it out, I earned the degree, but I struggled through the program. And had I followed my passion and had I followed what was in my heart and probably had gone to school for a master's degree in strategic communications or PR, I probably would have had a more enjoyable experience and I would have done better in the program. So again, that kind of goes back to knowing you and doing what's best for you and really figuring out what your path is going to be and then charting your own course and your own destiny.
Well, we are running up on time, but I just want to thank each of you for being on this panel tonight. Again, taking the time to share your knowledge that didn't come easily. You guys have been in this industry for a little bit and worked hard to get where you're at today and to gain this. So this is really valuable insight. So thank you to each of you for your time in walking through these questions. I'll just reiterate one more time before we close. My email is up in the chat. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me, particularly if you're interested in new pros. We have a lot of opportunities to equip you and to network together here in Cincinnati to really help you get you off your feet in your career. And we have awesome pros like this who you can use as resources and just have a chat with. Sometimes that can make all the difference in the world. So please reach out to me. Please look out for us on PRSA social media. And one more time, I'll say that our next happy hour, virtual happy hour, is July 30th, last Thursday of every month. Grab your favorite beverage and sit down at your computer and we'll just hang out for a while and talk through some stuff. It's a really good time. Yes, and as Rob said, please feel free to reach out to each of our panelists on LinkedIn. I'm sure they'd love a follow-up with you. So thank you all. And with that, we will close.
Thanks, Bo. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Bo.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.